What if progress does not always stop because an idea fails? Sometimes it stops because the idea succeeds in the wrong way. A treatment works, but cannot be easily patented. A material is strong, clean, and renewable, but threatens existing factories. A food source grows freely but weakens dependency. A technology promises abundance, but the world around it is built on scarcity. This is not a story about simple villains. It is about systems. It is about money, regulation, habit, fear, and the quiet power of industries already in place. Across history, some inventions reached the edge of transformation, then faded. Not because they had no value, but because their value did not fit the business model of the time. Each chapter begins with a possibility. Each ends with the same uneasy question. How much of the future has been delayed, not because humanity lacked imagination, but because the solution was too disruptive to survive? Before antibiotics, doctors studied viruses that killed bacteria. They were called bacteriophages. Each one could target a specific bacterial infection, multiply inside it, and disappear when the job was done. For a time, phage therapy looked like a powerful medical tool. It was used for wounds, dysentery, and dangerous infections. But then penicillin arrived. Antibiotics were easier to mass-produce, easier to store, and easier to prescribe. They fit hospitals, armies, and pharmaceutical companies perfectly. Phages were different. They required testing, matching, and individual treatment. They were natural, adaptable, and difficult to own. So the West largely moved on. Decades later, antibiotic resistance forced medicine to look back. Bacteria had evolved. The old drugs were weakening. And suddenly, the forgotten viruses seemed less old-fashioned than unfinished. The question is simple. Did medicine abandon phage therapy because it failed, or because another system was easier to sell? A car made from plants once pointed toward another industrial future. Henry Ford experimented with agricultural materials, including hemp-based composites, for automobile panels. They promised strength, lighter weight, and renewability. The idea connected farms to factories. Farmers could grow industrial materials. Cars could use fewer mined and petroleum-based resources. But hemp became trapped in restrictive laws. War shifted production. Afterward, steel and petroleum plastics dominated. The plant-based path faded. It was not because the dream made no sense, it was because the surrounding system changed before the material could mature. Today, biodegradable plastics and plant composites are returning as pollution becomes impossible to ignore. The old question returns with them: what if a cleaner material future was visible decades ago, but the world chose convenience instead? In the tropics, one tree seemed to offer food, medicine, and cleaner water. Moringa grows quickly. Its leaves are rich in nutrients. Its seeds can help clarify water. For communities facing malnutrition, it offered something rare, a local solution. Families could grow it themselves. They did not need to wait for imported supplements or expensive fortified products. That independence was powerful. It was also commercially inconvenient. Large aid systems and nutrition markets often depend on distribution, packaging, and repeat supply. A tree that people can grow at home does not fit easily into that model. Moringa never disappeared, but its biggest global push never reached its potential. Instead, it became a premium superfood in wealthy markets. A plant that could reduce dependency became most profitable when sold as lifestyle wellness. And that leaves a hard question. Do we support solutions that make people independent, or only the ones that keep them buying? Concrete cracks slowly, then all at once. Water enters. Steel rusts. Roads, bridges, and buildings begin to decay. Entire industries exist to inspect, repair, and replace them. Then came self-healing concrete. Researchers embedded bacteria inside the material. When water entered a crack, the bacteria activated and produced limestone, sealing the damage. It was a remarkable idea. Infrastructure that could repair itself. The benefits were obvious. Longer-lasting buildings, fewer repairs, less waste. Lower lifetime cost, less environmental damage from constant reconstruction. But the first price was higher, and in construction, the lowest upfront bid often wins. There was another problem. If concrete lasts much longer, repair and replacement markets shrink, so the material remained limited, despite its promise. Self-healing concrete asks a quiet question. Are we building for the cheapest contract today, or for the people who will inherit the world tomorrow? Some farmers believed exhausted soil did not need more chemicals first. It needed minerals. Rock dust remineralization used crushed stone to return broad mineral content to depleted fields. The idea was simple. Natural soil fertility comes from weathered rock, living microbes, roots, and time. Supporters reported healthier crops, stronger resistance, and better yields. But chemical fertilizers became the dominant model. They were standardized. They were easy to sell. Farmers bought them again and again. The industry around them grew powerful. Rock dust was slower, cheaper, and harder to brand. It did not promise instant results in every field, so it remained outside the mainstream. Yet the deeper idea still matters. Soil is not an inert machine, it is a living foundation, and if the soil forgets its minerals, eventually the food may forget them too. The ocean stores heat at the surface and cold in the deep. Ocean thermal energy conversion uses that temperature difference to make electricity. Warm water vaporizes a working fluid. Cold water condenses it. A turbine turns. The system can run day and night. For tropical islands, it promised clean power, fresh water, and energy independence. Pilot projects showed the concept worked. But building at scale was expensive. Deep pipes, saltwater corrosion, storms, and financing made progress difficult. Then funding faded. Fossil fuels stayed dominant. Centralized energy systems continued. Ocean thermal power became a promising idea left waiting offshore. The physics never disappeared. The temperature difference is still there. So the question remains, how many clean energy paths are delayed because they require a world willing to invest before profit is immediate? A fever once revealed a strange possibility. Some cancer patients improved after severe infections. Their immune system seemed to awaken and attack tumors. Dr. William Coley tried to use that response through bacterial preparations. Some patients had remarkable recoveries. The idea was bold: teach the body to fight cancer. But the treatment was difficult to standardize. It required close monitoring and individual judgment. Modern oncology moved toward surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy. These could be organized, taught, and commercialized more easily. Coley's work faded. Then, decades later, immunotherapy returned as one of the most important areas of cancer treatment. Modern science proved that the immune system could indeed be guided against cancer. Coley was not completely wrong. He was early, and early ideas are fragile. His story asks us to remember that the future sometimes begins as an observation the present is not ready to explain. Graphene is almost impossibly thin, yet it may change water forever. Researchers found that graphene-based membranes could allow water through while blocking salt, bacteria, viruses, and pollutants. The promise was enormous: cheaper desalination, cleaner drinking water, and portable purification for communities without major infrastructure. But the path from laboratory to global use is difficult. Membranes must be produced perfectly. They must survive real water, pressure, dirt, salt, and time. They must be cheap enough for the places that need them most. Progress slowed. Some reasons were technical, but there is also a larger tension. Water is a human need, yet modern systems often control it through centralized infrastructure and scarcity. A cheap, portable filter could change that balance. It would not just clean water, it could shift power. And that may be why a water filter is never only a water filter. Nuclear power once had another possible future. At Oak Ridge, scientists operated a molten salt reactor experiment. It used liquid fuel instead of the solid fuel rods found in conventional reactors. The design suggested major advantages: lower pressure, strong safety features, less waste, and the possibility of using thorium. Thorium was abundant and less tied to weapons production than traditional nuclear fuel cycles. The experiment worked. But the nuclear industry had already built itself around uranium reactors. Supply chains, regulations, military interests, and corporate investments were already in place. Changing direction would have been difficult, so the alternative path faded. Today, molten salt and thorium designs are being reconsidered. The old questions have returned in a world hungry for clean energy. The lesson is not that one reactor would have solved everything. The lesson is that once society builds around one technology, even a better path may struggle to be heard. Imagine crossing a city without traffic, weather, or waiting. Pneumatic tube transport promised capsules moving through low-pressure tunnels at high speed. Less air resistance, less energy, faster movement. The idea was not entirely fantasy. Smaller pneumatic systems had moved mail and packages for decades. Engineers imagined scaling the concept for people and cargo. It could have changed commuting, freight, and urban life. But transportation is more than engineering. It is land rights, tunnels, stations, safety rules, labor, politics, and cost. A new system must fight every existing system at once. Cars, fuel, highways, airlines, parking, insurance, and real estate all depend on the current shape of distance. Fast transport does not just move people, it changes who benefits from delay. So the dream remained mostly a dream. And the question lingers, do we tolerate slow movement because it is unavoidable or because too many industries profit from it? The pattern is not always simple. Some ideas were delayed for real reasons. They were expensive, hard to scale, difficult to regulate, or not fully proven. But practical barriers can also protect old systems. A medicine that cannot be patented struggles for funding. A material that lasts too long threatens replacement markets. A tree that feeds people locally weakens dependency. A filter that makes clean water cheap challenges scarcity. The old world does not need to destroy the new one. It only needs to slow it down. More studies, more delays, less funding, more uncertainty. Eventually, the idea becomes a footnote. That is how futures disappear quietly. Not in one dramatic moment, but through 1,000 small choices that favor what already exists. The question is not whether every forgotten invention was perfect. The question is whether we are honest enough to recognize when not ready really means too disruptive. Ahead of its time sounds like praise. But often it means the world failed to act. Phage therapy was ahead of its time until antibiotic resistance made it urgent again. Plant-based materials were ahead of their time until plastic waste became a crisis. Immunotherapy was ahead of its time until modern biology caught up. Ideas return when the world changes. But the lost years matter. People get sick. Soil weakens. Water remains unsafe. Infrastructure decays. Energy stays dirty. Communities remain dependent. That is why technological memory matters. A society should not only celebrate what won, it should study what almost won and why it was left behind. Some forgotten ideas deserved to fade. Others deserved more time, more funding, and more courage. The future may not always arrive as something new. Sometimes it returns as an old idea asking whether we are finally ready. These stories are really about permission. A discovery can work in a lab and still fail in the world. It can solve a problem and still threaten the systems built around that problem. That is the hidden difficulty of progress. Science asks, can this be done? Society asks, who will profit, who will lose, and what must change? Sometimes caution protects us. New medicine, energy, infrastructure, and transport need evidence and safety. But caution can also become an excuse to preserve the present. When abundance threatens profit, it is called unrealistic. When durability threatens replacement, it is called too expensive. When independence threatens dependency, it is called impractical. The point is not to believe every forgotten invention. The point is to ask better questions. Who benefits if a problem remains only partly solved? Who gains if a solution stays rare, costly, or controlled? And how many answers are waiting now? Not because they are impossible, but because we have not yet built a world brave enough to use them.